328. Bolt and nut lock washers. All joints are fully bolted with the proper size, type, and number of bolts, nuts, and lock washers. The type of joint bar used. These items must conform to the area criteria figures 2729 and table D13. 329 rail anchors. 329.1 general rail anchors are used in track of the subject series of movement of the rail expansion from the traffic of steep grades that must grip from the base of track base of the rail firmly have been bearing against the face of the tie opposite direction of creeping. Not rail anchors of the figure 211 in the following. The general rules applied to 329.1.1a. At location of the rail anchors are required, the ties shall be firmly tampered with and fully embedded in the ballast. 329.1.2 The bearing of the rail anchor of the rail has been redistributed. The removal of the tie, the anchor shall be removed and reset. 329.1.3 Ballast should be kept in the railway anchors. 329.2 One direction of the traffic shall be 340/16. 340/16 for player of the anchor of one direction traffic, of the very exception of the rail creepage in the direction of the traffic. The amount of the creepage will vary in with the kind of ballast used and location. Local condition. Figure 347 shows the ties of screwing caused in the rail creepage. Minimum 8 anchors and per 39 feet in rapid length is recommended wherein the needed exist. Additional anchors and shall be used. The needed rail anchors and shall be placed approximately uniformly across the rail length. To avoid the skew in the ties of the anchors shall be applied to against the same tie opposite rails. To provide the occasional reversal of the traffic to prevent excessive opening in case of the broken rail, at the least two backup anchors and shall be applied per rail length and boxed in according to tie within the two forward anchor near in the quarter point of the rails. 329.32 Two-way traffic. Effective anchorage is required in the traffic conditions and indicated in need, minimizing the back and forth movement of the rail, resulting in churching and bunching of the ties. This is a condition usually caused by train movements in both directions of figure 346. Uses 16 rail anchors and per 39 feet. 390-foot rail is recommended in 8. Using the power wrench. Anchors the resultant method of each direction balanced traffic. Traffic is lighter than the direction. Number of the anchors used to resist the movement of the direction may be reduced. Additional anchors should be approximately uniformly in railway length against the same tie under the opposite rails. The anchors that resist the movement of the two directions shall be placed in pairs boxed around the same tie. The arrangement of the rail anchors for one of the bolts in two directions is indicated in the diagram in 346, and important that the anchors are carefully applied that they be contact and remain in the contact face. 330 Gauge. The gauge range recommended for the use of sharp curves difficult to hold the gauge where and the traffic may shift and cause unsteadable roadbed conditions. 2 and 4 rods are used in each rail length and applied for the rods of the rail angles in the rail, and these jaws are firm grip of the base of the rail. Sometimes subtypes of gauge rods prevent the rails from canting and tipping, and the tipping is encountered when the combination shall be maintain alignment of the gauge on favorable conditions. The gauge recommendations are not required to the concrete ties. 331 Turnout covers. General, the number of the frog in turnout designates the nomenclature of the turnout. Figure 81 Generation. Establish the length of the switch points to the lead, distances, radius of the lead curve, length of the closure rail, and new number, length, and space of ties. 331.2 Replacement. Of the purpose of replacement of number 8 turnout straight out split switch, low switch stands, and solid magnesium self-guarded. Here it shows the top one is for essential in one direction trackage with 30 foot rails. The anchors in one direction of the traffic. It shows the railroad anchors in the direction of the traffic with a railroad joint. For traffic in both directions, the railroad anchors are spaced or both or any anchors and resist the movement of the direction of 39 feet, and B anchors in two directions of traffic. Result in the rail creepage. Frogs and standard replacement purposes whenever Wherever possible, the factor switching and equipment installation layout and conditions and must be considered by determining requirements and usual circumstances. Number 7 through number 10 will need specific requirements. You see the frog crossing under 30. You see the equivalent turnout, the three-way turnout, standard crossing, left-handed turnout, right-handed turnout, right-handed condensed crossover, left-handed crossover, double crossover, track functions, crossover installation. Location turnouts are located on the tangent, whether possible minimize wear, switch in points of frog guardrails, turnout and from the inside of the curve, the degree of the curvature, turnout approximately normal degree plus the degree of the curvature of the main line from the outside of the degrees of curvature turnout, and the difference between those two of the number 8 turnout, which angles at 12 inches, 24 feet, and 23 inches, installed in an installed 4-degree curve of the curvature throughout the turnout, and is equal to 12 and 24 foot 23 plus 4 degrees of 16 inches 24 and 12 23. Safety against derailment and economy maintenance require the turnouts located so that the total curvature does not exceed 16 degrees. In the figure 352 shows the turnout inside of curvature. 353 shows a typical ladder turnout installation. 331.5 position to facilitate the switching of desirable all turnouts to spur tracks leads the same direction. 331.6 switch ties are in length of spacing the specified standard 10-point plans of turnout policy governing installation maintenance and cross tie applied switches and ties. 3.31.7 length of switch points adapted to the various turnouts indicated in table 3.2 because of loose connections or broken combination connection rods. Serious defective likely to cause derailments. All connection and point connection rods require the close inspection of the following instruction or supplemented instrument illustrated in standard points in figure 3.18, 3.14, 3.149, 349, 315, 355, 356. Standard switch point length number 15, 22 to 30 feet. Standard 12, 22 to 30 feet. 10, 15.16.5, 8, 15.16.56, or 7, 17, 16.16, or 15.16.6, 8, 11, and 411. 331.17.1 major switches of the weight of section and stock rail weight points are ruined and renew stock rail, and if necessary to discover proper and connection points of the operating rod to provide an ample flange way to the open point of the stock rail, clip checkpoint, switch points, adjustments, and the cut rack thrower switches of 4 3/4 within the allowable minimum 4 inches according to the switch designs. Mechanical throwing with switches in paved areas adjusted to provide the maximum throw permitted to the equipment to provide all vertical bolt switching the connections of the cotter pins, placing the bolts in the facing up center and the side heel plates, and provide the uniform bearing and the switch points. 3.31.7.2 if the switch point protectors are used, the bolts are checked regularity and retightened necessary to protect or provide adequate protection of the switch point. When where makes and repair necessary manufacturing instructions should be followed. 31.373 and check that each switch determined that it operates freely and the points are accurately, then that rods does not follow and ties and ballast, and keep all operating mechanism cleaning through the lubricated keep all switch which is free of ice and snow and debris at all times. Frequently switch maintenance is discussed as in chapter 7 switches and item installation work plan. 331.7.4 maintenance surface line gauge throughout the keep of the gauge side of the maintenance track point on the line, which is the gauge side of the stock rail, advancing the point of the stock rail and rail bender at the process so that the point fits on snugly against this rail when closed. And table 3.3 gives the data of bends of stock rails, different lengths and switch points in table D1 and figure D1 that gives it regarding various turnouts. Note that in ground level crane trackage switches, the rails, some switches will be bow up and they're not serious defects unless it is switched passing the crane. Ensure that the ample flange way is available from between the opening point of the switch and stock rails is controlled by the flange width of the crane wheels and using for tracking system. 3.3 offset table of the offense of the bending of stock rails. Length of the switch point 30. Distance of the bend ahead of the switch point 7.38. Perpendicular offset from the original line of the 10 feet of the bend 1 and 7/8. 22 feet 5.5 inches 5 and 1/8 of an inch. 16.5 8 and a quarter and 3 and 5/8. 16th of an inch 4 and 16th of an inch 3/7 and an eighth of an inch. 11 5.5 and by 6.5 6/8. 31.3 in switch stands. The switch operating mechanism consists of hand operated switch stands and thrower lever connection rods. Switch stands is placed on the 2 15-foot header ties, and the point of the switch ties. A practical switch is located on the right side of the track in respect to the normal direction of the traffic. Switch stand is installed and maintained according to the following requirements. Turn of the curve, and then there's another turn of the curve ladder of the turnout insulation. Nomenclature of the switch parts. Through 31.8.1, hand lever operates parallel to the track. 3.3.82, throw standard is available. 1 and 4 1/4, 3 1/2. Adjustment is made at each switch point. Is throw 4 3/4. Throw of the switch point should minimum 4 inches. Center of the standard stand is approximately 6 feet long, 6 inches. Center of the track. Colored targets that are strictly shaped and target are provided to indicate the switch points clearly, and location indicates the necessary figure. 3.57 shows the type of switch stands, how most commonly used in the military. It may be used in paved areas. And figure 3.15 and show the type of switch stands. It clearly shows the setting of the switch of the high target. For night operation, switch targets are red and green reflectors, and general green lanterns are mounted on spindles, and green indicates the normal, red indicates the switch reverse. 331.9 railroad frogs. When necessary to purchase a new frog, the solid magnesium self-guarded frog should be purchased. However, apply to the ragged bolted frogs that have been used, and above frogs should be used unless variation specifically authorized in higher authority. The rigid frog is preferred at all locations because of their maintenance and characteristics. However, their use of turnabout frog is mandatory at certain angles and below 30 degrees, depending on the frog angle and curve radius, flangeway, and the crossing rail. Existing and spring rail frogs shall be replaced as soon as practicable. And standard rigid frogs, and when using the standard bolt frog, guarded rails shall be insulated by protecting the frog point, and assess the prevention of derailments for railway frogs. Install in the following manner. 3.31.9.1 the frog number corresponds to the turnout number. The frog is in the same weight in the section of the rail and through the lead. 331.9.3 all frags are fastened. Switch the ties and hooks and then fully spiked. Spikes will be kept and fully driven. All points must be tight. Any broken bolts should be replaced immediately. 331.9.4 correct line. Surface and gauge shall be mounted. 3.3.1.10 guardrails. Guardrails are not required. Solid magnesium self-guarded frogs except for the under special circumstances. Guardrail may be either 8 feet or 4.5 inches. One piece of magnesium 9 feet and 5 inches teeth. With affiliates, guardrails placements requirements. Guardrails placements and guardrails are placed in accordance with Figure 315, 359, 360, and 362. Here we show a turnout. Here's a switch stand target and a switch stand high target. Gauge guardrails must be checked frequently. Normally, the distance of the gauge line of the frog and the flangeway of the guardrail is 4 feet and 6.5 and 5/8 of an inch. Guard check. However, the curvature of the turnout exceeds the 8 degrees distance of the 4 feet 6.3 and a quarter inch, regardless of the track gauge distance between the guard line and the guardrail and guard line of the frog. Guard face gauge should not exceed 4 feet and 5 inches. End of the guardrail placed on the tie otherwise protected to prevent loose of dragging objects or catching following a rail. Derails and rails are mostly keeping the operating condition. Frequently observations should be made and go see. The clearance of the point has not been changed because of shifting and movement and running track. Derails and pointed in bright chrome yellow to make the clearly visible derail. Devices in Figure 363 are not permanently should not be placed on the track unless needed. Rerailing cards clearance marker where derails are not used in chrome yellow strips attenuate inches, and why should they be painted across the web base of each rail of the connection track of the clearance point, and other than distinctive marker should be used. This marking should be must be located in sufficient distance of converging on tracks to provide adequate clearance between the standing and moving trains and road crossing, and preventing standing trains of the cars from the following intersection. Gauge of gauge guardrails. 1. The distance from the gauge guardrail of the frog in the face guardrail at C 4/4 and 5/4 and 5/16 unless curvature through the turnout exceeds which the case is 4 by 6 by 34 of an inch, 4 feet by 6 and 3/4 of an inch, regardless of the gauge. All locations as possible of the straight position of the guarding face of the guardrail, nevertheless than twice than the frog per number in inches, and must be placed in the head of the frog point in Y and arrow-headed projection back of the guardrail extent of the straight position. Derail and rail installations. Crossing clearance and markage 12 feet long, painted on both sides of each rail. Limits of clearance: the parked car and the parked car of 13 by and the perpendicular tracks of 13 and cross adjacent is 13 feet. Center lines of parallel track space and limited to the minimum clearance. The clearance distance of each cars must be less than 3 feet. 13 foot by 13 foot from the center and off from each grade off the tracks. Turnout ladder tracks, clearance markers, units of minimum clearance, switch governing tracks, location of clearance markers in Chapter 4, and that's where we're going to stop.